Hey guys, it's Jessie from Plaid. Welcome to Let's Paint Live, which is our monthly paint night where we teach you to paint a full painting in just about an hour. This month's painting is going to be Peaceful Posies, so it's kind of fun and bright to hopefully get you guys ready for springtime. So let's go ahead and I'll let you guys know what supplies we need to get started. So I have here my 12 by 12 inch wood panel. This is just a wood panel here you can see. This is made by us, by Plaid. But if you have a canvas at home, that works too. 12 by 12 is fine. And for this painting, really, it doesn't have to be square. If you're gonna have a little bit of a longer canvas or taller canvas, that's fine too. You can totally adapt this painting for any size canvas you have. I have our 10-piece variety set from Folk Art. I've got my water basin or anything you've got at home to clean your brushes in, some paper towels, and tonight I have some paper plates as my palette. So the colors, we're gonna be using Folk Art acrylics like usual. And if you don't have these paints at home, I totally understand. It's hard to get paint right now, so please feel free to substitute any colors you have at home, anything you prefer or that you've got on hand, that's totally fine. So we've got Wicker White, Bright Pink, Apple Red, Daffodil Yellow, Classic Green, Aqua, and then last but not least, we've got Navy Blue. And all of these paints are also included in our Let's Paint Live kit. So if you've got that at home, you should be all set. I'm gonna grab my #1 liner brush, and I'm gonna put just a little bit of Wicker White onto my palette. Just about a nickel-sized amount for now. I'm gonna wet my brush, and I'm gonna put some of the water into the paint and mix it up a little. I'm watering it down a little to get sort of an inky consistency because we are going to sort of draw our flowers with this. It's gonna be really subtle so you can't see it. If you wanna use a darker color, you totally can, but I use white just because it's easier to paint over. So I'm gonna start drawing circles. They don't need to be perfect because they're flowers, so of course they're gonna be imperfect because they're nice and organic. I'm gonna draw lots of them to fill up the top half of my canvas. I wanna make sure my sizes are random and they're sort of randomly placed. So here, I'll show you how I'm gonna do it. You know, I'm not sure you'll be able to see that at home, so I am gonna use a darker color. Let's do navy. Like I said, I usually use white just so it's easier to paint over, but I just wanna make sure you guys can see where I'm drawing my flowers at home. So I'm using navy blue now, but really any color will work for this. And I'm just drawing circles. You can see my circles are not going to be perfect. And the way that I tend to draw circles, as you saw just there, I start with the left side and then I go to the right side because it's easier for me to pull down. That feels more comfortable when I'm holding my brush as opposed to going all the way around and then going back up. That doesn't feel as natural to me. So I like to pull down, so I go left and then right. So then I'm gonna draw just a few more circles. I'm gonna draw different sizes, like I said. And I want them to be pretty close together. There's no right or wrong way to draw these circles. These are gonna be our flowers. So they can be totally random, just as if they were all growing together in a field. Sort of like bubbles right now. So some large, some small. I'm not putting really any pressure on my brush. That's how I'm getting a nice thin line. I'm just using a tip, and this is my #1 liner brush. And I'm pulling down either side. And again, this isn't gonna be perfect because, you know, it's gonna be flowers, so flowers don't need to be perfect. But also, we're gonna paint over this. So if it is bugging you, you have one circle that maybe turned out a little funny, you can just paint right over it when we go to add the colors. This is just to get our layout down. So maybe I'll put another couple small ones right here. And like I said, I've got them pretty close together. We're gonna be putting some leaves in between, and we're gonna be painting the background. So just as long as they're random, that's totally fine. You can have them as close together as you'd like. So I'm gonna clean my brush off. Make sure it's nice and dry. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab this is my #10 flat. I'm going to put some aqua on my palette. About a quarter-sized amount. We're gonna go ahead and paint our background right now. So I'm starting with a smaller flat brush so that I can get around my flower outline. And if you're painting this later on at home and you are pausing and sort of taking your own time, you can totally paint the background aqua first and then paint your flower shapes on top. But we are not doing it that way tonight because we want to make sure we can get this painting finished in just about an hour. So I don't think the aqua will dry in time for us to paint our pink and red flowers on top. So that's why we did it this way. We don't want to have aqua underneath them because that will turn brown and muddy. We won't have time to dry it. But like I said, feel free to just base coat your canvas in aqua if you're painting at home and you're painting at your own pace. And I'm not being too terribly careful because like I said, we're going to paint our posies after this. So if you get a little bit of aqua into one of your circles, that's fine. We can just paint over it with our posy colors. It's not a big deal. We just want to get that aqua, make sure it's all filled around it. We don't want any open canvas after we're done painting our flowers. One of my favorite things about this wood panel to paint on is that it absorbs the paint so quickly. So if you're trying to do a nice quick painting, your paint dries really fast as you go because the wood absorbs it because it is unfinished. But if you prefer your paint to be a little wetter on your canvas for longer, you can prime your canvas or of course use a regular stretched canvas instead. Usually they come primed, so that totally works too, whatever you've got at home. You can see I'm not being terribly careful. I'm just making sure I get all that aqua in there. Just a nice even coat. I don't want it to be too thick, just enough so that it's fully covered. I'm trying to spread it out and make it nice and even. And you can see what awesome coverage this Folk Art acrylic paint has. Again, this is aqua that we're painting with, and it's just going to be one coat and it's going to be full coverage. And that's really one of my favorite things about Folk Art acrylics, is that it has such awesome coverage when you're painting like this. It would kind of stink if we had to go back and do this all over again and paint between all these circles, so pretty lucky that these paints are so awesome. Again, I'm using my number 10 flat brush, and we're using Folk Art acrylic in aqua. And we're just painting around these circle shapes that we have drawn. I'm gonna wet my brush a little. Like I said before, I really like this canvas because this wood panel canvas, because my paint dries so quickly, but sometimes it can cause my brush to dry a little. So when that happens, I'll just add a little bit of water to my brush and it helps the paint flow a little better. And that's just because it's absorbing it so quickly because it's unfinished. But you can feel free to finish your canvas if you prefer. You can put some gesso on it or seal it with something else before you start, and that'll help keep that from happening. Okay. Just painting around these circles, not being super careful because we are going to paint on top of this anyway. We just want to make sure we get that background color in. And I just love this aqua color. This is probably one of my favorite folk art colors. All right, now that I've got it painted all around my flower shapes, I'm gonna go ahead and clean this brush off, and I'm gonna switch to a bigger brush to go ahead and paint this bottom. It'll be much quicker. So I'm just switching over to my 3/4 inch flat brush, just so I can paint this bottom area a little quicker. I'm gonna add some more aqua to my palette. And again, I'm using my 3/4 inch flat brush, and we're using Folk Art acrylics in aqua. And we're just painting the background right now, making sure we've got a nice even coat around all of the flower shapes to sort of get us started. Nice and even. I don't want too much paint because I want it to dry quickly as I go. Just a nice even coat. All right, looks like I got pretty good coverage there. I think I got every place. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna clean my brush off. And next, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put some colors onto my palette. Here, I'll turn it around and give myself some space. I'm gonna start with bright pink, and I'm gonna put about a nickel-sized amount of each of these onto my palette right now. We're gonna start doing some mixing. And then I'm going to put some daffodil yellow. Again, about a nickel-sized amount should do for now. We can always add more. And then I'm also gonna put some wicker white onto my palette. And don't forget, please feel free to use any substitutions you have at home. Any white is fine, any pink is fine, any yellow is fine. I know it's hard for everybody to get supplies right now, so please feel free to substitute where you can. Okay, so we're gonna use these 3 colors and we're gonna start mixing some of our posy colors. So you can see here, I'll show you the finished one. We've got sort of a variety of colors. We've got like this hot pink and sort of a peach color and a light pink. So we're gonna use these 3 colors to mix sort of the base coat of each of those flowers. So we get a nice variety of pinks. So I am gonna start by just painting some of them with the bright pink, because that's already a nice bright pink color. My brush doesn't want to clean out. So I'm gonna use my bigger brush just because it's got better coverage, my 3/4 inch flat brush. And I'm gonna pick up some bright pink. I'm gonna paint some of the bigger flowers. And I'm just gonna fill them in real quick, not being too careful. I just wanna make sure that it's filled with color. I don't wanna see any open canvas beneath it. You can see I went over the teal or the aqua a little bit there. It should be starting to dry up now, especially at the top. So you can see it covered it pretty well. And you can totally pick which areas, here, I hope you can see that, which pinks you want on which flowers. It's your painting, so it's totally up to you. I like the really bright pops of pink, so I'll probably do some of my bigger flowers in this bright pink so there's more of it. Because I love the way it pops off of that aqua color. And I'm just using, you can see I'm sort of doing a sweeping motion to get right up to the edge there. To get right up to the edge of my circles. I'm sort of using the edge of the brush to my advantage. I'm putting a fair amount of pressure on it. And I'm sort of lining the edge of my brush up with the edge of that circle. And so I'm getting a nice smooth edge. It looks like I underestimated a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna grab some more bright pink on my palette. I'm just gonna do a couple more flowers with this bright pink. And maybe one over here, a little guy. You can see I'm going over the teal a little bit, or the aqua a little bit. Don't even worry about that. Nice hot pink flowers. So I'm gonna clean my brush off. And I'm going to go for a medium flat brush. So I guess I'll use my number 12 flat. And we're gonna mix a little bit here. So hopefully you can see this. We're gonna grab some bright pink, a little bit of daffodil yellow, and then a touch of white. And we're gonna see what sort of pretty corally pink color this gives us. It's sort of orangey. I want it to be a little bit pinker, so I'm just gonna go ahead and add some more bright pink. And the fun part about mixing this way is that the flowers can be any color you want. So whichever color you get is a good color because it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be a specific color. It can just be whatever colors you like. So I think I like this. It's sort of an orangey color. I'm gonna use this to paint some of my other flowers. And again, I'm using my 12 flat, and I just mixed together some bright pink, daffodil yellow, and a touch of wicker white to get this pretty peachy orangey color. And I'm going to use that for a few of my flowers. And I'm using the same sweeping motion. I'm putting a fair amount of pressure and sort of twisting my brush around to get right up to those edges. It's a really great way to paint circles quickly. Instead of having to go around each of the edges and make sure it's lined up, you can just go ahead and use the edge of the brush to your advantage and paint it that way. Running out, I'm going to mix a little bit more. Bright pink, yellow, and white. I love the way this orangey color pops against the aqua as well. It looks really pretty together. Keep underestimating how much paint I need. I keep having to remix, but that's okay. I kind of like too that every time I mix it, it's a little bit different. So not all of the flowers are exactly the same. I kind of like that. They might all be a slightly different shade, just how they would be in nature. Oops. Go ahead and fix that and get that extra blue off my brush. Okay, I'm gonna wipe off the excess paint and clean off my brush. I'm gonna do a little bit of bright pink. Turn my plate around so you can see. I'm gonna pick up some bright pink and some white and get sort of a light pink color here. Be a little bit more white. And I'm going to use this light pink color for the rest of my flowers. And you can see that I'm really not that concerned about the edge of the flowers because this is sort of a loose painting, so I don't mind that the edges are a little bit organic. That doesn't bother me. I kind of prefer that they're not perfect circles. But I know some of you at home will want perfect circles, so it may take you a little bit longer, and that's okay. That's the good thing about these Let's Paint Live videos is that you can watch them with us and answer questions and see how we paint it, and then you can always go back and watch it again after the live stream is done and paint at your own pace. And when you watch it after the live stream is done, you can feel free to pause it and stop wherever you need to. All of our Let's Paint Live paintings are all in our video library on our Facebook group and on our YouTube page. So you can go back and watch. We've got a couple dozen paintings at this point, all different paintings every month for the past couple of years, and they're all up there now, so you can go back and paint any of them that you like. Get a little bit more white and pink. And last flower. Go ahead and just paint that real quick with some of this light pink we made. All right. Go ahead and clean my brush off. And my my paper plate's a little bit full now, and I'm going to be doing some more mixing, so I'm going to go ahead and grab a fresh plate, but I'm going to keep this in case I want to go back and use any of this paint, since I don't want to waste it. But I'm going to get myself a fresh plate for mixing. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put on my palette some aqua, or you can use it. We already have it on our other palette. Like I said, I just refreshed. So feel free to use whatever you've got on your palette. But we're starting with aqua, and then I'm going to grab some classic green. We're just putting about a nickel-sized amount of each. And then I'm going to need some wicker white. And then I'm going to also grab some daffodil yellow. And like I said, you might have some of this on your palette already too, because we've been using that a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back to my number 12 flat brush. I'll make sure that I have all of the pink out of that. And we're going to do sort of a similar thing that we just did with the pinks, but we're going to do it with our greens and blues to mix some different grass colors. Here, I'll show you on our finished painting. We're going to mix these variety of colors here with just the colors we have on our palette. So here, I'll show you how we're going to do that. I'm going to start by picking up some classic green. And again, we're using our number 12 flat brush and some daffodil yellow. We're going to mix these together. And this is going to make a really pretty lime sort of citron color. Put some yellow because I want it to be a little bit brighter. You can make it as bright or as dark as you'd like, however you prefer it. So I like that color there, so I'm going to leave it like that. I'm going to wipe off the excess paint from my brush, because when you mix with your brush, you oftentimes get way too much paint on it, and it's not as easy to paint with so much paint on your brush, so I like to wipe off the excess before I put it on my canvas. Okay, so to paint the grass, we are just going to take our brush and we're going to make vertical lines starting from the top and going down. And we're going to start with a little bit of pressure and then apply a little more pressure towards the base. And here, I'll show you how I do that. So I'm going to hold my brush upright, and I'm going to start dragging my brush, and then I'm going to start pressing down as I get lower. So you can see it gets a little bit thicker towards the bottom. Do the same thing, and we're going to do this totally random again. We're going to mix all the greens in different heights and different widths and different colors all at the bottom. So I'm going to do one maybe here. So I'm just pressing very gently, and then I'm pressing down. So very little pressure, and then I'm applying more pressure. And you can see this is really quick. Again, not perfect. We just want it to be sort of random and natural looking, just how grass would be. All different shades of green and all different heights and thicknesses. And I'm just putting them in random spots. We can fill it in with our other colors. This is just the first of a few. You can make them thin or thick, it's totally up to you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and clean my brush off. Get a fresh paper towel. And next I'm going to pick up some of the classic green. I'm going to put some aqua in that. And then I'm also going to put a touch of yellow and a touch of white. So with the color palette that we've kind of got here on my plate, you really can't go wrong. There's no way to mix these four colors and get anything but a pretty green, really, because they're all in the same family. They're all next to each other on the color wheel, so they won't make each other muddy. You can see I just mixed all four of these and I just got another pretty green. So you can sort of play around and get different greens and see what you like. You really can't make a mistake here. I'll wipe off my excess. I like that color. It's sort of like a minty green. I'm going to do the same thing that we just did with this citron color. Just starting at the top of our area, very little pressure, and then pressing down. Very little pressure, then pressing down. And again, we're using our 12 flat brush. Starting at the top and then pressing down. Top and then down. All right, I think that's enough for this color. I'm gonna wipe the excess paint off my brush and clean it off. And I think I'm gonna do a little bit of the aqua and white to get sort of like a light blue color. I think that'll be pretty next to these greens. A little bit more white. Got kind of a messy palette today, but that's okay. And again, I'm using wicker white and aqua right here. I've got too much paint on my brush. I'm gonna wipe off some of the excess and salvage it. And I'm gonna keep doing the same thing, making my grass. So start at the top and then press down a little more. Adding more pressure. You can even, if you want to get kind of funky with it, you can start at the top and then press down and pick up and press down again. That could be kind of cool too. So we're sort of playing with the pressures to get different shapes of our blades of grass. You can overlap them a little bit. I just want to make sure I don't have any gaps. There, I think I like that. So I'm gonna again wipe off the excess and clean my brush. And while I've got these colors out, oh, I'm actually gonna use that same blue again. I didn't need to clean my brush. I'm gonna mix a little more of it, just a little bit of aqua and some white. And we're gonna paint the leaves that are up near our flowers with this color. That's going to help fill in some of that negative space up there around our posies. Wipe off the excess. Okay, so I'm still going to be using my number 12 flat, and I'm going to make sort of leaf shapes. So, of course, you all know what the shape of a leaf is. Here, I'll show you on my palette how I'm going to do it. I'm going to hold my brush upright, and I'm going to go to the left, and then I'm going to go to the right. And it's as simple as that to make the leaf shape. And then I'm going to go ahead and fill it in. But if you want to practice a little bit on your palette or on a paper towel, feel free to do that, or on some paper, whatever you've got at home. But I'm going to go ahead and show you. I'm just going to sort of fill them in wherever I feel like there's a nice big opening for a leaf to go. So here, I'll make one here. I'm going to go on one side, and then I'm going to go on the other side. And I'm putting very little pressure on my brush. I'm using just the very tip of my brush to get that thin line. I'm letting the edge of the brush do the work for me, and then I'm going to fill it in. And if you do feel more comfortable using a liner brush for this, you can totally do that. I think we've got our number 1 liner in this pack. So if you want to use that instead, you can feel free. It might be easier for some people to draw it and then fill it in with the flat brush. Whatever is comfortable for you. But just to make it a little bit quicker, I'm going to go ahead and use the same brush for both parts. Maybe I'll put a leaf here. I like having it go off the canvas because it makes it sort of appear that there's a lot of flowers and we're only seeing a little tiny portion of it. I'll do a leaf sort of peeking in here. And again, I'm just using the very tip of my brush. And I'm putting very little pressure on it. And I'm just putting leaves where I have an opening and I'd like to fill the space. Put as many leaves as you'd like. You can make them as big or as small as you'd like. It's totally up to you. I put a little water in here. I feel like I'm dragging a little bit. Here we go. Maybe one here. We're just filling that negative space between our flowers. I think it needs one more here, maybe. Just a little one. Okay, so now I'm gonna wipe off my excess paint. And I'm not gonna wash my brush just yet. I'm just gonna wipe off the excess paint onto a paper towel. And I'm going to pick up some aqua, just a little bit. And I'm again gonna make sure that I'm gonna use the tip of my brush. You can see I don't have a ton of paint on here. And I'm gonna create the veins in the leaves. So here, I'll show you. I'm just gonna start here and then whoop. I'm just gonna sort of flick it. I'm not putting very much pressure on it at all. I'm not even filling the whole leaf. I'm just sort of flicking it out like that. You can see the little motion I'm doing. Flick. Just to create the vein of the leaf, to give it a little bit more interest. This is so quick, you can see I'm hardly spending any time on this at all, just to give it a little bit more detail. All right, and now I'm gonna go ahead and clean my brush off. Get a fresh paper towel. Okay, and I'm actually gonna switch back to my original plate that I kept right here, because I wanna see these colors that I used. I wanna see these pinks that I mixed. And I'm gonna grab some apple red, and I'm gonna put just a little bit of it onto my palette. And I'm still gonna be using my number 12 flat brush to make sure it's nice and dry. And I'm gonna start by mixing some of my bright pink and apple red. I'm gonna mix those together to get sort of like a deeper pink, like a magenta sort of color. Got a little bit of blue in my brush, so I'm gonna make sure it's a little drier. There we go. Okay, so with this color, I'm going to paint sort of the shadows of these bright pink flowers. And the way I'm gonna do that is I'm again gonna use the tip of my brush. I'm gonna start on the left and I'm going to put pressure down and then pull up on the right. So we're gonna paint the shadows in just one stroke. So here, I'll show you how we're gonna do it. We're gonna start here, press down and then pull up. And you can see it's just a quick stroke. It's very easy to do. May take a little practice, so feel free to practice on your palette. But we're not spending too much time. We're not doing a lot of blending here. It's just a quick stroke to sort of suggest that there's a shadow on that flower. So I'm gonna do it again here. I'm gonna start here and then push down and pull back up. Got too much paint on there. And then on this one, push down, pull back up. And again, we're just sort of suggesting that there's a shadow on the bottom of the flower. We're not spending a lot of time. We're not doing any sort of crazy blending, just quick. And so this I'm going to start on the left side and go down because it's hard to sort of start with the pressure and then go up. So here, I'm going to start on the left side and pull it down that way instead. And I'm going to do this for all of my bright pink flowers. I think that was the last one there. Okay, great. So now to paint the shadow part of these light pink flowers, I'm just going to use the same mixture that I have, but I'm going to add a little bit of white so it's not so dark. Because that's pretty much what we painted these with. If you remember, this was just bright pink and white. And so now we're just adding a little bit of red to deepen it, to create sort of a similar color, but just darker. I'll wipe off that excess. And I'm gonna do the same thing for these. I'm gonna start on the left and I'm gonna pull down and then pull back up. Start on the left, pull down and pull back up. Left, push, up. You can see we're not doing blending like I said, we're just sort of suggesting that there's a shadow, making our flowers look a little bit rounder. Do the same thing over here. And that's all my light pink ones. Super quick and super easy. So I'm gonna clean off my brush and we're gonna create the shadow for those orange flowers. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna try to mix a similar orange to what we had before. So I'm pretty sure we used bright pink and yellow. I think we had some white in there too, but I'm gonna go ahead and leave the white out since we're painting the shadow right now. And I'm gonna add some red to deepen it. Because of course the pink is, pink is made with red, of course. Pink is just red and white mixed together. So if you add red, that will make your pink darker. So this looks good. This looks like sort of a darker version of that orange there. So I like this color. So we're gonna do the same thing for our orange flowers. We're gonna start here and then pull down. Start on the left, push down, pull up on the right. Start on the left, push down, and pull up on the right. You can see super quick, super loose. It's a really fun way to paint. Okay, so now we've got all of our shadows in. We're gonna do something very similar to paint sort of a highlight on each of the flowers. So we're gonna sort of try to remember, continue to remember what colors we use for each flower, and we're gonna add white to those, white or yellow, to make them brighter. So I'm actually gonna start with a fresh plate again. But again, I'm keeping my plates here in case I wanna go back and use that paint again, or if I wanna refer to any of the colors that I mix, I'm gonna hang on to them until I'm done with my painting. I'm going to grab some bright pink, some white, wicker white, and a little bit of daffodil yellow. So to mix these, I'm going to start with the lightest one. So we'll grab a little bit of pink, and then we want a lot of white. We want it to be a lighter color than what we've got there. And I'm going to add a little bit of yellow into it just to warm it up a little. Because this is sort of a warm pink that we made here. It's not very cool. And make sure that's nice and mixed. I'm going to add some more pink. Maybe a little bit more white. So you can kind of see as you're going, as you're mixing, what it needs more of or what it needs less of. And if it needs less of something, then of course you just need to add the other colors a little bit more. All right, so we have a nice light pink here. It's lighter than what we've got there. And I'm gonna do the same thing, but I'm gonna do it on the top of my flower. So I'm gonna start on the left, push down, and then pull back up. Start on the left, push down, pull back up. Doing the exact same thing we did before, we're just going on the top to create a nice little highlight there to give some dimension to these loose little flowers. The same thing here. Okay, so I'm going to use the same color because I got a nice little pink going, but I'm going to add some yellow. And that's going to give us a light orange color for our orange flowers. And make sure I have the excess paint off my brush. Do the same thing for the orange flowers. Light, press down, and pull up. Light, press down, pull up. Again, so loose. It makes it really fun to paint this way. You don't really have to think about all the little details and blending. It's just quick and loose. All right, you can't really see the top of that one, so I'm not going to paint any on there. Now I'm going to clean my brush off. Make sure it's dry. And then I'm going to mix the color that's going to be the highlight on these bright pink flowers. So we're kind of going backwards from the way that we did the shadows, and that's okay. So I'm going to grab some bright pink. Then I need a little bit more of my wicker white. And I'm going to mix those two together to get a light pink. And again, these don't need to be perfect because you can mix yellow and pink and white together all you want and you're just going to get pretty pinks and oranges. So you really can't mess it up. Don't stress about this. If it looks good to you, then it's good. All right, I have a nice light pink here, so I think I'm happy with that. I'm going to go on my bright pink flowers and start on the left, push down and pull up. Push down and then pull up. Push down and pull up. I have one more little guy here to do. All right, so now we've got all of our base colors, our shadows, and our highlights painted on our poppies. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna clean my brush off. since I've got all these colors mixed, I like the idea of there being some sort of small flowers sort of growing out of the grass that haven't really made it up into this big area of flowers yet, that are kind of working their way up and still growing. So I'm going to paint a few just freehand small flowers on top of the grass. Now that my grass is dry, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paint just a couple little flowers here and there to match those guys. So here, I'll start with, maybe we'll go back to this palette. And again, this is why I hang on to these until my painting's done, because I don't want to waste any of this paint. I'm going to pick up this medium pink color I think I like. Just sort of whatever you've got left on your palette is fine for this. Any sort of really pretty pink or orange will totally work. So I'm going to paint a little circle here. So I'm going to pull down to the left and pull down to the right. And then I'm just going to fill it in. You can use the edge of your brush just the way we were filling in the circles before. And I'm going to do another little guy up here, I think. Pull down to the left and pull down to the right. And this just looks like there's some little flowers growing up in the grass. Not quite as big as these guys yet. Maybe I'll do some of this orange color and do another little guy right here. And again, just whatever you've got on your palette. You don't really even need to mix a new color for these. So I'm going to add some red to those colors that I just did. I'm just going to paint a little shadow on there, nothing fancy. Very loose. I'm going to add some red to this pink and paint some shadows on these guys. Super duper loose. All right, so I'm going to wipe my brush off. And if you're feeling crazy, you can even paint the highlights on those too. So I'll add a little white to this one. You can see how messy my palette is this time. That's because I'm doing so much mixing, and that's okay. I'm doing kind of experimenting as I go. And I'll add white to this one and do a little highlight there. Really quick little flowers. So they match the bigger ones at top, but they're definitely not perfect. We just painted them freehand. All right, I'll clean my brush off and dry it. I'm gonna go back to one of my plates that has a little bit more room. I keep switching back and forth. There's really no rhyme or reason though. I can see my plates over here and I can see which color I want, and then I'm switching back to that plate. If you have a bigger palette, if you're using palette paper or something, that's even better. So you can have all of your colors there at once. My plates are just kind of small today. All right, so I'm gonna grab some navy blue. I'm gonna put about a nickel-sized amount on my palette. And we're gonna start adding some details. So I'm gonna pick up a little bit on my brush, and we are gonna start painting the centers of the flowers. So the way we're gonna do this, we're gonna continue, and sort of the theme of this painting is just really loose, and we're just gonna paint some darkness in the middle to look like the center of the flowers. So here, you can practice on your palette. We're literally just going to hold it up and then dab, 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 dab. And that's it. We're just gonna create some darkness to imply the center of a flower. So here, I'll show you. Just dab, 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 into a little round area. And that's it. That's what we're gonna do for the centers of these guys. And the sort of the darkness inside of the flowers really stands out against these bright colors. I really love that. And of course we can do bigger areas, and then we can use the sort of corner of our brush to do smaller areas for these guys if you want, if it's easier for you. Use the corner of my brush and just go dab, 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 dab. Super loose, very random. Just dabbing in a little circle. Just creating darkness to imply the center of our flowers. Just use a tiny, tiny corner of my brush. Okay, so I've got all my flowers. You can see that really made them pop, having that center navy. You can see that made them really bold. So that's why I love putting navy in the center of my flowers, especially when I'm using really bright colors like this. Okay, I'm just gonna wipe the excess navy off my brush. But we're gonna continue using the 12 flat and navy blue. So I'm gonna load my brush back up. And we're gonna make sort of a shadow area around this, just to sort of frame our painting. So here, I'll show you what I mean. I'm just gonna start at the bottom and I'm going to pull up. You can see it's sort of a flicking motion. It's very loose. I'm just going to start at the bottom and pull up. And I'm going to do that sort of all along the bottom here. This is sort of creating a shadow for our grass. Just kind of like we did for the flowers, how we went back with a darker color and created a shadow for each of our flowers. It's kind of similar. You can think of it the same way. So there would be, of course, it would be darker at the bottom where they're all covering each other up and there's going to be lots of shadows. So that's kind of what we're painting here. I'm just starting at the bottom and pulling up. You can go up as high as you want to. And I'm going to go up really high on the sides there. Like I said, just to sort of frame my painting. So I'm going to kind of go upwards at the edges. I like how I like the dramatic darkness at the bottom when we have all these bright colors. Just kind of how it did, how it affected the center of our flowers and made the painting really pop. This is going to add some more interest and some more drama to the bottom of our painting. Just very loose, just pulling up. You can see it's sort of a dry brush, really. Okay. So we've got one more step to this painting. And we are going to take some Daffodil Yellow. I'm still using my 12 flat. I haven't changed brushes. And some white, some wicker white. And we're going to mix those together to get a really opaque yellow. So most of the time, yellow paints are very transparent. It's just the nature of yellow pigments. But if you add a little bit of white to it, it'll be much more opaque. So if you're ever having trouble covering something in yellow just because the paint is really transparent, just add a little bit of white to it. It's sort of a little trick. So I'm going to clean my brush off. You're going to be wondering why I just mixed that and now I'm cleaning my brush off before I paint with it. And I'll show you. Make sure my brush is nice and dry and clean. We're going to paint with the end of our brush. So you can see here, I'm just using the end of my brush. Any of your brushes will be fine for this. And I'm going to dip my paint in there. And we're going to paint little dots to fill in, to make details and to fill in some of the negative space in our painting. So here I'll show you. I'm just going to do a little dot. And it's just another bright color to give our painting more interest, to make it pop. It's the little details that really make a painting feel finished. So just little dots. And you can see I'm sort of doing a circular motion. I'm sort of balancing my hand with my pinky and I'm doing a circular motion and I can get a bigger dot that way. If I just dotted it, I would have a much smaller dot, which is fine too, but I wanted them to be a little bit bigger for this painting. Another great way to do these dots is if you have a pencil eraser at home. That works really well for a stamp for paint. And you won't have to do the swirling. You'll just have a nice, big, clean dot shape. You can see I'm just kind of going around and doing them in pairs. And wherever there's some open area on my canvas, some negative space, I'm just going to put some little details in with these dots. And feel free to mix more yellow if you feel like you're running out. I'm going to put some dots by these little guys down here. And again, you can put as many or as few as you'd like of these. It's totally up to you. Just a fun little detail to add at the end. And that is the last step for Peaceful Posies. So when you're finished with your painting, make sure you go ahead and sign it. And that's it for Peaceful Posies. So please share your paintings with us online. We'd love to see how they turned out. Hashtag Plaid Crafts. And you can also hashtag the Let's Paint Challenge. We have tons of members in our Let's Paint with Plaid group sharing all of their artwork and tagging each other and challenging each other to make their paintings and post them online too. So we'd love to see what you're working on. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to debut June's Let's Paint Live, which is going to be Tropical Tiger. So I hope you guys can join us. It's going to be June 4th at 7:30 on our channel. So thanks for joining along, and we'll see you next month. Bye!